I think I was scrolling YouTube one day and I came across one of your videos, and I'm so thankful to that day that I was scrolling it.
वीडियोस में कॉन्सेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी और ये सब काफी ज्यादा थ्योरी ऑफ आइडियाज जैसे मैंने देखा था, मुझे अच्छे से याद है मैम।
पीपी क्लासेस का बहुत बड़ा रोल है मेरे सोशियोलॉजी के 280 मार्क्स में।
Shekhar sir's YouTube videos prove to be a very helpful. I also joined answer writing. I also joined test series and sleepy classes.
I completely relied on your channel.
My name is P K Sidharth Ramkumar. I hail from Cochin, Ernakulam district in Kerala. In CSE 2023, I was able to secure All India rank 4, and my optional was Anthropology, and I graduated in architecture from Kerala University in 2019, and from 2019 I've been preparing. In 2020 attempt I got into Indian Post and Telecom Accounts and Finance Service, and in 2021 CSE I got into Indian Police Service, and in 2022 attempt I again attempted CSE and got about 121 rank. Service did not change, and in 2023 CSE now I've got All India rank 4. So I mostly started my preparation after graduation. That happened in about July-August 2019. So after that I went to Delhi in September 2019 for preparing for optional, which was Anthropology. I prepared offline from the institute L2A, Learn to Achieve. So I went there for 3 months classroom course in Anthropology, and after that I came back, and then COVID happened in early 2020, and so most of the preparation happened online after that. And in terms of GS preparation, I did take content from multiple institutes, like 2 institutes from Kerala itself, from Trivandrum, and 1 from Delhi, and so I took help from Rao's IAS, some mains test series, and also some content from IAS Baba, 1 test series from IAS Baba, and in another attempt I had taken test series from Enlight IAS and Fortune IAS in Trivandrum, Kerala. Personally, I think every stage is very unpredictable and you can get eliminated in many ways in every stage. Although back of the mind I had slightly more confidence about the interview stage somehow. And in terms of preparation for the 2020 CSE, which was my main attempt after I started preparation, so I had extensively prepared for prelims only in that year, but then I did give about 80-90 prelims test series, prelims tests about 80-90, and then I had prepared, in fact I had prepared more for prelims because the number of people actually getting eliminated is more in prelims. So that year I had prepared extensively in terms of base books like Lakshmikant, in terms of Spectrum, be it current affairs. I had referred to multiple sources including the institute's content, free content, and also multiple YouTube channels, newspapers, Indian Express, The Hindu. But after that, so in that attempt then I cleared prelims. After that I prepared for mains mostly after prelims, although I had completed optional beforehand. And so for mains that year again I had prepared, I had given multiple test series, and then interview happened. Interview also went well that time. That year I got about 187, and then but then I didn't get through in the first list. I got through the reserve list, and I got into Indian Post and Telecom Accounts and Finance Service. And after that then the next attempt I got into Indian Police Service. So that year also, that is 2021 CSE, that year also I did give multiple tests for prelims, again multiple test series. So test series I think that year I gave from some institutes in Kerala and some online, and even free tests which were available online. And then I prepared, I got through prelims. That year I got decent marks again in prelims, and then prepared extensively for mains, again wrote test series. But then after that interview happened, I got into Indian Police Service. 2021 CSE, after final result there was very little time. So after that 2022 prelims I got about 5 days or 7 days. So prelims I did not prepare as such, but then probably because of the preparation that I had done earlier, that year's prelims I somehow luckily got through. And again 23 this year CSE also, after last year's result came, there was hardly a week if I am not wrong. Again I didn't prepare for prelims separately. With a heavy dose of luck I think I again cleared prelims, especially CSAT. I was not actually expecting CSAT to like that I would clear CSAT, because I checked keys after the exam and I was expecting 65, so I was not actually expecting to clear prelims this year, and then somehow CSAT I did clear. And after that again mains. So most of my preparation was focused on mains, And interview also, every time I did prepare a lot, because I like to prepare for interview, because interview and all you can do a lot of your own stuff. And my DAF also had content, like my graduation is architecture, and then this year again I'm coming from police background, Indian IPS, and then I had things like heritage walk and stuff, and coming from Kerala again. So these are things that are generally interesting for people to ask. So I enjoyed preparing for my interview also. For prelims, most of my, as I said earlier, most of my preparation for prelims happened in the 2020 CSE attempt, and somewhat good preparation happened for the 2021 CSE attempt also. So for prelims, mostly what I did was, like all serious aspirants do, I made a list of base books. So those were 1 Lakshmikant for polity, 2 Spectrum for modern history, and 3 for ancient and medieval. I read Pratik Naik PPTs, and then I read 1 book by McGraw, Poonam Dalal ma'am, and then I did read 11th and 12th NCERT for history and geography alone. So NCERT I only read 11th and 12th history and geography. For economics I did read Mrinal sir's content, online free PDF which was available, and then I had prepared extensively from newspaper and current magazines and all that. And for environment, science and tech and current affairs, I referred to Indian Express, The Hindu, like not both every day or on a consistent basis, but still I did follow those newspapers, and also monthly magazines. So sometimes I would be reading daily, sometimes not daily, sometimes I would miss a day or a week even. So if not newspaper, I would be reading at least the headlines. If not the headlines, at least probably some YouTube like video on some news, or if not that, sometimes just monthly magazine compilation. So somehow just kept afloat with the preparation. For strategy for mains, mains again. So mains is where actually I prepared most, where I spent most of my preparation in terms of time and in terms of the effort. For mains, basically my this thing was in the 2020 CSE attempt. I had looked into content from toppers, so the previous year toppers, then the basic content, like whichever books I had read for prelims, I had made some short notes, and then I had prepared like some good introductions, conclusions, some basic content, and then I had looked into some questions from test series which I had referred, like some institutes in Kerala, 2 institutes from Kerala, and 1 from Bangalore and 1 from Delhi. And then also, so I also relied heavily on content from previous toppers, because I felt they were again updated, and 2, there is this thing that it worked for them, so even I got the confidence that it would work. I think if I can remember, there was this Telegram channel called Hardworking Human, so that was by an IAS officer of 2018 or 19 batch. So the sir's content was also very helpful in terms of prelims and in terms of general inputs for mains also. And so if I have to split it GS wise, so for essay, essay was not my strong point, if I have to be very honest about it. Even till now I have not got above 130, 135 for essay. But then essay, I did enjoy preparing for essay, because there is a lot of content, innovative content that you can collect. There's a lot of ways in which you can innovate in terms of the introduction, in terms of the body, in terms of how you end. For example, I had made use of content like content from movies, dialogues or movie plot, movies like Shawshank Redemption or Citizen Kane or things like that. And then even famous movie songs, or even thought experiments like things like the marshmallow experiment, or the Iowa classroom experiment, or the Stanford prison experiment, and stuff like that. And essay again, so I had also looked into some self-help books like The Atomic Habits, and like I didn't read the entire book as such, but then there were some books which I had read for which I had content, and then I looked into the summary or the basic content or ideas, themes on some books. And then for essay, I did look into some content from, I think, Mudit Jain sir's videos, and Hardworking Human, that's hers videos also. So toppers content, and then some innovative content that I made on myself from pop preferences and things that I like. For example, content from cricket, or so there's this, like there are some interesting lines, interesting things which you can quote. For example, in terms of, so I'm a huge fan of Sachin and Dhoni. So you can, so I did take a lot of anecdotes or famous things that they did, like in terms of Sachin's humility, Sachin's ethics, in terms of Dhoni's work ethics. Like I think there was this thing where he had a daughter and there was this famous statement that was there that he was on national duty and he chose to play for India, and then so things like that, which was very inspiring and also which could be used in essay ethics, stuff like that. And then if I come to GS1, geography I looked into only 11th and 12th NCERT. But for mains again I prepared separately in terms of so my focus was more on PYQ. So there was this triangle of PYQ, previous year questions, syllabus areas which were specifically referred in the main syllabus, and thirdly current affairs if there are any major areas like river linking or anything, any major issue that is happening in terms of the GS1 syllabus, be it culture, be it geography, be it history. So mostly for GS1 current things, if at all they come, it will be mostly related to geography. And in geography also there were some themes which were repeating. For example, water, climate change, environment, some disaster. So there were some themes which were repeating, so I noted down those themes and then prepared a one-page proper crisp notes, be it committees like Water Mihirsha Committee or even the recent Ravi Chopra Committee on disaster, like on disaster and environment, be it Gadgil Committee, Mihirsha Committee. So committees on environment, committees on water, committees and statistics, examples. Like if I am talking about climate change, I would use content like how the Pallikarnai wetland in Tamil Nadu that was encroached, and how which airport came in which place, and how that probably affected the floods and all that there. So connecting different reasons, connecting the causes, effects with examples to the topics in the syllabus and in the major areas that came in the previous year questions. And in GS1 and also I did take some content from columns that came in The Hindu and Indian Express, because most of the authors that were writing columns in those newspapers were very reputed, very famous. So I did even quote some of the thinkers, some of the people who wrote in the columns, and there was some interesting content, be it in terms of the introduction, catchy introductions, catchy conclusions. Like there was an article by UN Chief which had some very interesting, very thought-provoking statements which could be used, which were used in the essays, ethics, etc., and even in GS1, especially in GS1, because it was related to climate change, water, etc. And in terms of history, again my basic content was from Spectrum. I had made short notes like the names of leaders, names of the events, and some content which was only for prelims, but then I thought I'll just quote them. For example, I had one half page or one quarter of a page note on police, on army, on civil service reforms, like which are the committees, which are the major things that happened, things like Sanders Commission, things like all the committees, all the major events, all the major leaders, all the major themes, ideologies, things like that came in history. And then I did take some interesting content from books, like there were some books which were quoted in the Spectrum itself, and then there were some books like Shashi Tharoor sir's book, or any Ramachandra Guha sir's book, or some famous book that came later. If there were any major ideas or any major diagram or something like that, I did take content from that. For example, in modern India, I remember I had a diagram, like I did make a list of diagrams, and one particular diagram was how the per capita GDP of India and Britain changed from 1600 to 2022. So it changed from for India it changed from 200 to about $2,000 to $3,000 per capita, while, if I am not wrong, while for Britain it changed from below India's 200, from 150 or about to more than 30-40,000. So, and the point where it converged, there were many factors like the Industrial Revolution, like colonialism, there were factors like that. So using the existing content to the statistics, to the graphs and themes which are prepared separately. So that was something I did for history, and also some content from current affairs, like connecting, for example, the this was mostly mostly in the notes, and I used only those which came in the questions. For example, there was Janjatiya Divas in news, and there were some events like Birsa Munda, Lord Birsa Munda in the history notes. So I connected both if there was a question on tribes that was asked, or things like that. So that was for history, and then I prepared some interesting introductions, conclusions, and also even statistics, like be it like the education, what was the status of education in 1600 to 1800 when British left in 1947, and what is the status now. And for example, I think there was one hospital per 350 miles square or something while British rule was at its peak. But after that, after British left, how the conditions changed. So there were statistics, there were content that was all. So basically, my point was to use content that was there with everybody else, and then embellish it with facts, with committees, with diagrams, with graphs, with content from any books, references, etc. And then for culture, again, basic book was Nitin Singhania sir's book on art and culture. I made short notes, so the whole culture thing was about 15-20 pages. Basically, my idea was that if there's a 10 marker, I need just 10 points. I need just basic theme, like frame on how, if there's a question on architecture, I would have a frame like form, function, structure, or material, things like that. If it is literature, there will be again a structure. So I had made a structure, and for every major theme in literature or architecture, I had some few points. So that was it about literature, architecture. I had made some notes, and then again some embellishments in terms of I had quoted some thinkers. So there was a book by Kapila Vachian ma'am, like Heritage of Indian Art, and then circles and squares of Indian art. So some book, I think the name is correct. So basically, there was some interesting content that I could get from those books, like how, like there were some points which are common to Indian art, like how there is the concept of the center and the different wheels emanating from the center. Like Indian art in general, be it mosque, be it stupa, be it any Indian temple, there was the idea that at the center there is the quest for liberation, or there is the search. So there were some themes which were common for Indian art, and there were some things like Sarvam Sarvotmagam, or which basically meant that the whole was bigger than the parts. So there were some themes, underlying themes which could be commonly used for every major aspect of Indian art. Again, in terms of dance, there were so content from Kapila Vachian ma'am's books. Even though I didn't read it fully, I did quickly scan and take some content, and I read some articles on the same. And then content from news things, what Ministry of Culture did, year-end review or stuff like that. And then in terms of society, I again made 1-page notes on all major areas, be it communalism, be it regionalism, be it all the major themes in society. And then one thing that helped me in society was that my optional was anthropology, so I did take thinkers, content, themes, and content from my optional stuff. And so that was about GS1. Now talking about GS2, so in my mains preparation, my strengths I believe were GS2 and GS4 were my biggest strengths, and then optional anthro. Although in hindsight, my anthro mark this year has been better than any of the other papers, but GS2, GS4, then anthro, then GS1, then essay, and finally GS3, because GS3 marks are generally less, and mine also has not gone above 90. So GS2 was generally my strong point. So GS2 mainly has polity, constitution, governance, international relations, and vulnerable sections. What are the schemes? What is the status, and what can be changed? So these were things which were very close to my heart, and which was generally where I was able to score a little more marks. And so coming to polity, again Lakshmikant was my primary base for prelims. For mains, again I had made content like what Granville Austin said, or what Ivor Jennings said about something, and a list of cases. Like there was a list of cases which were common which has been like prepared by toppers from very long. I think starting from Anudeep sir, like toppers have prepared a lot of content, and so I took those, and then I added my own cases, which I collected from different newspapers and websites. So I added on to those, and other than court cases, I also tried to add some cases from the US and UK judiciary, and even EU judiciary. So there were hardly like for US about 5 to 10 cases, UK 3 to 4 cases, and EU probably 2 to 3. The reason why I prepared on those was because there were questions in PYQ about about UK judiciary, about US judiciary, and general European stuff. So there were cases like Roe versus Wade, Marbury versus Madison, Gutter versus Wallinger, and some other cases in US which I remember, and in UK Gina Miller cases, and in EU also there were some cases which I prepared. So these were some cases which I prepared outside of Indian judiciary. Sometimes these cases were also quoted in the newspapers, so again collected from those and otherwise. And then I taken some famous points from judgments, like from Live Law or from the Hindu or from content like that. And then also I had taken content like stuff like famous like principles, like principle of proportionality. So the Puttaswamy judgment, although the case and the main thing are like generally quoted by everyone, like there will be some things which are common, like very specific things from a case, like so there was this NPL triangle, necessity, proportionality, legality triangle in the Puttaswamy judgment. So this thing could be used in multiple cases. Depending on the context, you can use it in multiple cases. And there were other such things that I took from cases for GS2. And then in GS2 polity, I think I also took specific statements of experts like Upendra Bakshi sir or some judges or some experts, some other experts, and most of these came in the columns in Indian Express and the Hindu. And then in GS2 again, GS2 and other things, so I also try to add some specifics. So there was the so I did add content from experts, and then statistics. Statistics could be from Parliamentary Standing Committee review PDF. In that, finally there will be some recommendations. So I'll quickly scan through the recommendations, take few specifics, and then try to add it. And then status I can get from some again some government PDF and some columns in the Express or the Hindu. And then so I had this mnemonic called SQR LED, stat, quote, report, law, example, and diagram. So my main this thing for answer writing was, if it is a 10 marker, at least 10 pointers, 10 points. If it is a 15 marker, at least 15 points. And depending on the question, dividing it into 2 subheadings or 3 subheadings or more. And then in the intro, catchy intro conclusion. I mean catchy intros and conclusions. And in the body, I would add this, like if there are 10 points in the body, in every point. So initially, what happens in the mains, at least to me, is that we'll get a general point. So I try to make it very specific by adding a stat. In every point, there will be a stat or a quote or a report or some law or some example, some principle, and finally in every question there will be a diagram. So these diagrams are not general flowcharts, although sometimes it will be general, but for every theme in the syllabus or every major different question that came from PYQ, I had a very specific diagram in having some specifics also. It is just if the question, in that question I had no content, no diagram, I would add a simple flowchart or something like that. Basically my idea was that before the exam, as far as possible, the content is the king. If you have very good content, then according to the question, even if you don't know about 7 to 8 questions, if the theme is repeating, I mean all the others are also in a similar position, but if you have good content, maybe you can tweak the content according to the question. Still you have better diagrams, better content, better specificity. So my focus was on specificity more. And coming to IR, so this was this thing same in IR also. International relations also, again experts like diplomats, former diplomats, people like Kissinger's principles or Kissinger's 3P, the power, pragmatism, things like that, and other experts also, even people who wrote in columns in the Hindu or Express. And also again specifics, like if there is, and generally international relations questions come from the news. For example, if Sri Lanka is in news, maybe a possibility of a question coming from Sri Lanka is more. So you can, I think, zero in on some countries, and for that I used to collect some specific content like hard power, what is the military, this thing, even specifics to the level of military strength or something which could be generally compared and noted. For example, India-China comparison in terms of military, in terms of economy, actual GDP, in terms of even inflation at that in the previous quarter or something. So there was a lot of current statistics. So basically the point being, concepts and general points should be there, but then if you can add details, if you can add specifics a lot more, it gives a lot, it can substantiate your general points a lot more, in a lot more better way. So that was this thing that I use in IR. And then other than that, in IR, again in IR also I did add a lot of conceptual diagrams, maps, and most of the views from people like Shyam Saran sir or Shiv Shankar Menon sir or Nirupama ma'am, or experts like even Raja sir who writes in the Indian Express. So content from them also I try to reduce it into diagrams or reduce it into graphs, and then comparison between the major powers or the major countries in news also were made in graphs. So even though I was not able to use about 95 to 99% of my content, that did give a I mean confidence, and if at all question comes, at least from that area, I would be having a better content than most of the people in the preparing in this thing. So that was my whole idea for IR also. Coming to social justice and governance. For governance, there were specific areas like local governance, or like there were areas which were repeating, be it e-governance. So for that also, there were general points and general notes which were coming from textbooks or from toppers. So I collected those, I made it crisp, and then I added on what all things government is doing, what all things are happening in other countries. So I, like, be it from Wikipedia, be it from some books which I quickly scanned through and took content from, I again had made some specifics. So there were comparisons, there were statistics, there were like new concepts even in e-governance, and then even in terms of representing it in terms of diagrams, in terms of flowcharts, I did try to innovate. Again, none of the content is my own content, but then I did look into content from different sources and compile it and use it in this thing. In governance also, again, as I said, statistics, codes, reports, laws, examples, all of that were used. Then coming to social justice, again, there are specific sections which are quoted in the syllabus, and then which you know are important, and there will be some things that are very much in use in that particular year. For example, if national education policy is in use, there is a very high chance of education related question being asked. Even otherwise education is very much important, but then again higher education or primary education. So separately for each section of education, health, and each different section of the community, I did prepare short notes. So my notes for even primary education will be 1 page, but then it will be filled with facts, and then I'll have a separate intro, like in one line I'll be having 3 to 4 types of intro that I can use for primary education. In conclusion, then statistics, then facts, graphs, reports, be it either this thing or be it government's reports or stuff like that. Again, the same for health, the same for other related contents. And coming to and for each vulnerable section, be it women, be it scheduled tribes, be it scheduled castes. So for each section I prepared notes, and again anthropology again helped me because I had a lot of content, lot of thinkers, recommendations, actual proper recommendations, like Kaka committee report on tribal upliftment, that had specific recommendations like separate UGC chair. So very specific recommendations were used in every different part of the syllabus. And so that is about GS2.
I think I was scrolling YouTube one day and I came across one of your videos, and I'm so thankful to that day that I was scrolling it.
वीडियोस में कॉन्सेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी और ये सब काफी ज्यादा थ्योरी ऑफ आइडियाज जैसे मैंने देखा था, मुझे अच्छे से याद है मैम।
पीपी क्लासेस का बहुत बड़ा रोल है मेरे सोशियोलॉजी के 280 मार्क्स में सर।
Shekhar sir's YouTube videos proved to be of very help. I also joined answer writing. I also joined test series and sleepy classes.
I completely relied on your channel.
So continuing with GS3, for GS3 again content was prepared on similar lines. The SQ, RLED, different reports, committees, examples, all of that was prepared for every syllabus area, every major question that was asked in the previous year question, and on major themes that came in that year's current affairs. So that was about in the previous 6 months to 1 year. And coming to GS4 ethics, so ethics was again one area which generally I like to prepare on, and in terms of marks also I did get about 129, 127, 120 thrice. So ethics was generally at least in hindsight my strong point. So for ethics I used content from Mudit Jain sir's book, and then I prepared a lot of content on my own in terms of examples, in terms of thought experiments, in terms of examples from movies, from literature, like books like Moby Dick or Frankenstein, or like characters like Frankenstein, and so major, like even things like Dostoevsky's books, or like major famous literature works and their themes or major things that were discussed in those can be used in ethics and essay. So that was also prepared shortly, I mean in a very crisp manner. And then I had this thing that for ethics the major thing was structure. So structure was simple. I feel in ethics generally the thing is the questions are a little open-ended, or like there is a lot of freedom that the question gives you. So I had made some frames. One frame was that I felt ki the syllabus was very important. Even if a open-ended question is asked, suddenly you will not be able to come up with many points. So I felt the syllabus had a lot of things in itself. So I had made a mnemonym for the syllabus like DRCAAPEI, determinants, role of different family, culture, etc. And C, consequences, causes, consequences. So causes is role, consequences. Then attitude, aptitude, and emotional intelligence. And then I had mnemonics for each of the different attitude, ABC of attitude, what are the different things, and etc. And EI again, Goldman's model, etc. So the base notes were common for most of the aspirants. But then I tried to innovate on diagrams in terms of thought experiments, in terms of literature, in terms of adding stuff from cricket and other things like that. And then again, diagram for every question. Even for case study, I had prepared. So how you approach the case study, again you can have different models. So I tried to use design thinking model. It had a frame. So I used one. If there were 6 questions on case studies, in one I used the design thinking frame. In one I think I used the theory of change frame. In another I would have used the Potter box frame. So I had some frames, and then some frames from even self-help books were used. So not that these are needed, but then I wanted to make my paper look different, and also try to explore how the ethics paper could be done in a better way. And probably also coming from architecture background, I always had this emphasis on making my paper look different. So I tried to do that, and that was easier in GS2, GS4, essay, and also even optional anthropology also. For answer writing, I think, so for my first serious attempt in 2020, I did write about two sets of all GS papers, and I think 2 sets of like 8 papers on optional also, and few essays. But then after that, so I did for optional at least I wrote in L2A again, and then I remember I asked sir whether these answers are good enough to fetch about 300 marks. So 300 was my target, and then I did ask him whether this was good enough to get 300. So I used to get 140, 145 in the test series, sometimes 130, 135. But still, so there was this. I got this understanding that if I write these, chances of getting, or there is this possibility that I could get 280 to 300. And then that year I got 281. Then after that I was not able to write in 2021. For Anthro I did not write any. For GS I wrote few. My Anthro did reduce to 268. But then my GS again, even though GS I in 2021 attempt I did write some test series. For again, so answer writing basically what I feel is important is one. So one is time management. Luckily for me, time management was not much of an issue. Because I had reduced everything to how, like I had prepared on introductions, conclusions, body also squirreled, how many points, if it is 10 marker 10 points, 15 marker 15 points, and then I used to mostly try to brainstorm answers rather than actually writing, because mostly I didn't have time, or I would feel that I should spend time on content, although this is a trade-off, it is a difficult trade-off, risky trade-off, but then I was more onto content and brainstorming and less on answer writing. But I think answer writing is always better. If you can write 1 to 2 sets, it is definitely good. Note making, I think, is fundamental to the whole preparation process, and at least to my journey, I think note making was the most important aspect of this whole process, because as I said, in my journey, for me, mains preparation was more than prelims, and note making was more important than actual answer writing. Because I feel if there are good notes, if you have good frames, if you have thought about everything in terms of previous year questions, in terms of the different things that are there in the syllabus areas, and in terms of current affairs, I think you can write any answer. But then again, if it is your first serious attempt, it is better that you try some papers and then get a level of confidence so as to feel if you write this, you will get this. So in 2020 attempt itself, I was even though my GS marks that year was less, it was only about 360 or so. 350, 360, that is quite low. But then I did feel that that I knew about how to structure an answer and how many points are needed, what all things need to be added. So in my 2021 CSE attempt, my GS score jumped to about 420s. Then again I got this confidence. So 2022 CSE I didn't write many. 2023 this year's exam I didn't write a single GS paper or Anthro paper. But then I did brainstorm. I had prepared on every PYQ for the last 10 years, and then I did brainstorm many papers from test series of some institutes, and sometimes with peers also I discussed some questions. So for me, note making was very, very important. I had 4 books for GS, one for each GS. One GS1 I had a book, GS2 I had a separate book, GS3 and GS4. And for Anthro I had notes from L2A, I had short notes. That was about 4 files of notes, and then I made some content from Vivek Basmesar's book. Some notes I had taken from a colleague of mine and the Indian Police Service, Melvin Verghese. So his papers were also quite helpful this year. And then I taken some content like very select content from Ember and Ember, very select, and then some content. And this year I had taken content from some good JSTOR articles, some from for socio-cultural part of Anthro I had taken from Mandar Patki sir's notes, and for bio I had taken from Narayan Amit sir's content. So basically I had mixed the L2A, my base notes, with some content that I had taken from JSTOR, some research content, and then some from Topper's notes. And then for some flavor I added intro, in intro or conclusion I added famous books like Harari or Diamonds, Guns, Germ, Steel, etc. So some innovative content, some current things. So note making was very important in this whole process. I did not have a very rigid timetable as such, but there were so I had a very intense preparation, but then there were days where I would not read a thing if I am exhausted. So there will be days when I will be only watching Netflix or watching movies, but then most of the days I will be fully studying, doing very little other than studying. So it was mostly on an intense basis, either fully studies or fully doing something else, movies or cricket or something. But then 8 out of 10 days I will be studying. And another thing is that in my 2020 and 21 attempts, I did get a lot of time. So 2020, since I got into the reserve list, I did get some more time after the first list came. And after 21, since I got into Indian Post and Telecom Account Service, and then even though I got into Indian Police Service, there was 6 months where I was in the telecom, this thing, and so by then my preparation hours reduced, but still since my notes were strong, I was only adding on to the notes and current affairs also. I knew which all sources to look into, and since it worked once, there was less emphasis or less search for new sources and new content. And 21 IPS, again GS worked well, SA also was decent. So 2021 attempt when I got into IPS first, that year only my interview marks were down, it went to 160 from 187. So next year again I felt my written was strong, so again written improved, although Anthro again came down to 260 last year. So interview again went up to 185. So there were, I felt most of the things were working, but 1 or 2 things were falling. So somehow this time I think luckily everything fell in place. I think again it's a very highly subjective thing, and it's very difficult to say that with confidence. I think at least I think it should be taken as my personal views. I think I feel preparation should be done very realistically and like very intensely. Like focus should be on 3 things. One is for at least for mains. So since most of my preparation was focused on mains, there are 3 things that to be focused, where focus should be. One is the syllabus areas. Mains at least is more predictable than prelims, and especially more predictable than interview, and mains is where 85% of the final marks are. So for every syllabus area, because questions are invariably asked from the syllabus area, you should have very solid content, solid notes, very good content for PYQ. And it is also important to analyze whether your content is strong enough. Like one is to compare it with previous toppers content, 2 is to check it with some institutes if you want to, or you can also try to compare it with some good articles in the newspaper or things like that. So to basically the idea should be to increase your factual intensity or the specificity of note making, your notes, your answer, because if your content is very factually very strong, if there is strong data, strong graphs, strong comparisons, very good suggestions in the conclusion, be it committee recommendations, don't just quote the committee, but have some solid suggestions. So be it the introduction, be it the body, be it the conclusion, everything should be having some depth, some value, but your notes can be very small. Like let's say you are quoting the Damodaran Committee on Governance, you can have very, like your note can be just 1 line on Damodaran Committee, it recommended this, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notes can be very short, but then it should be very specific, I feel. Second is PYQs, solid very well. Third is current affairs, again restricted to 1 if possible, although I did read Vision and Raos, not exhaustively but selectively. but then I think one is good enough. So I mostly prepared from Cochin, my home itself. Although for optional I went to Delhi. Because my optional was anthropology and I was not able to find confident like institutes in Kerala. I was not able to get in touch with any institute for anthropology, so I went to Delhi. But I feel going to Delhi is not very important. There are some good institutes in Kerala itself, and but then going to Delhi also is not like Delhi. You have an atmosphere where there are so many people. There is easier access to stuff. But then since everything is available online today, I think going to Delhi is not very important. So I personally am a person who studied alone mostly. I didn't want to get bogged down by the like so many people in ORN. Although I did spend 3 months for Anthro, I came back quickly after that. So even here I didn't go to Trivandrum for classroom as such. I did take content, I did take test series and stuff online. So I did it online mostly, but then I think it depends on what you want. There are people who want actual mentorship, actual like classroom thing. For that, I think probably you should go to places like Trivandrum or Hyderabad, Bangalore or Delhi. And otherwise, online is good enough, I feel. So again, interview in hindsight at least, I feel 3 out of the 4 interviews went very well. I got about 185, 187 in 3 out of the 4 interviews. One went down to 160. I think for interview this year I had Sanjay Verma sir's board. It was a very pleasant experience. Like it was very, like the board was very cordial. The questions were also very, like there were some questions where I could actually I was able to give good content, I feel. For example, there was a question on what is green architecture, and there was another question on asking me to architecturally analyze that particular room where the interview happened. And then there was the final question, in fact, was about 10 women who inspired me. And then there was another question, and there was some. So basically, my interview this time revolved around policing, architecture, and few questions on Kerala. Mostly it was architecture and policing. So architecture, green architecture, and then so again I had prepared solidly on green architecture in terms of examples, case studies, in terms of parameter wise, etc. And then I quoted Laurie Baker's style of architecture again with example, taking Center for Development Studies, trying to analyze all that. And then the question on analyzing that particular room also in terms of the sustainability of that room. Again, I took it in terms of the cladding, in terms of window air quality, in terms of the height and thermal comfort, in terms of ventilation, there was no cross ventilation, etc. Stuff like that, and taking some statistics that I had prepared beforehand. And for policing, there was a question on imaging. I mean, image of policing, why it is bad, why, and there was another question on famous, like my 3 favorite IPS officers, and some other police related questions also. So again, for policing also, since I was undergoing training and I'm still undergoing training at the prestigious National Police Academy in Hyderabad. So I was having content, and for interview also I had prepared from the NPA library also. I had taken some books and prepared some interesting content. So that also, and luckily there's a heavy amount of luck also involved in the whole process. Luckily that day the questions were in such a way that I was able to answer also. I think if it is your first serious year of preparation, if you have absolutely no idea about interview and you have a level of tension or stress about the interview, I think it is good to give mocks so that you know how, although the actual UPSC interview I feel is very different, but then since the mock interview panels will have some very esteemed members, I think mock interviews are a good exposure, it's a good experience to have in your first serious attempt. But after that, and again there's a catch, you should be able to take each view as, like there will be multiple views that come your way. I think it is important to retain your originality and at the same time make some changes which are very glaringly important to be made. Otherwise I feel, so in my 2020 and 2020 attempt, I had given about 30-35 mocks online and offline in multiple institutes. And so I got about 187 and my interview went well and I was also confident. So from 2021 attempt I probably gave 2 mocks. Last attempt and this attempt I gave only one-on-one, I feel, or 1 or 2 one-on-ones, that also online. Like focus on mock interviews was very less in the last 2 attempts. My preparation was mostly about note making. So I tried to add things from cricket, from movies, from stories, from poems, from music that I like, or random things which I find interesting in the news, in YouTube, in Netflix, in pop culture, in sports, everything. So even if I'm watching a movie, I'll try to take some reference, some things which I can use in essay or ethics, or even an interview. There will be some things which you can, like, which will stay with you, which will inspire you, or have some impact, which can be used. So although I'm not saying that is very important, but then that was some way in which I felt that I was not wasting time. So it was mostly for mental satisfaction. But so I used to go for cricket. I used to play cricket. Then I used to watch a lot of movies. So if I'm studying and suddenly at 11 o'clock in the night, if I'm exhausted, I'll if there's a movie nearby, I'll go for the movie at night. Be it even at 12 o'clock, I went for a movie. I think between prelims and mains this year, I would have watched at least 10 to 15 movies. But sometimes if I feel I'm wasting time, I would come back after the first half. So it was not like I am entirely doing this or that, but then very intense. Suddenly if I'm exhausted, I'll go do something else, come back again, do something. And I had very small books also for short notes. Like although as I said I had GS 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 big books, proper notebooks, I had small pocket size books also for GS 1, 2, 3, 4 and Anthro, which I would use while I'm going for a walk. I used to go to Wellington Island here in Cochin for a walk. I think this time invariably every day I used to go there for a walk. But then I'll be having this handy book and then some short notes, some frames, examples. So those I'll be doing. I'll be brainstorming. Even if I'm not doing anything, at least something, I'll be having a feeling that I'm doing something. So these are some things which I used to do. So I am not very active on most of the social media sites. Only on WhatsApp I'm very active. But then I didn't change anything in WhatsApp. I was very active in, like, with some of the friends, with some of the groups where I am active, I was always active. But most of them was like with personal friends, with groups which are very like the IPS, some of the groups in IPS Academy, my school groups, my school friends group, one college friends group. Very few groups where I am active. But then other than that, in Facebook, Insta, I am hardly active. In Twitter also I am hardly active. So social media was only about WhatsApp. But then I was very much I actively followed YouTube, mostly for preparation, because if I'm exhausted reading or writing something in note making, and then I'll be watching something, B's Business Standard, Express, Hindu, everything. I had a YouTube channel also. I think if coaching is not affordable, definitely it's not, I'll say it is not that important, because there are a lot of toppers every year who are actually properly guiding people, and even for me I think toppers content and toppers videos were more useful in hindsight, because one, there is this credibility that you feel because they have cleared, chances of their content and their approach working is more. But then if you feel you're not so confident, and if you think going to institute is better for you, that also works. I think institutes are also doing good work. Some of the institutes are also doing good work. But then I don't think coaching is necessary, because end of the day preparation is done individually. Even if you, like, I didn't go for I went only for Anthro in terms of classroom preparation. Most of the other stuff was online test series content and this thing. So I feel online is like enough for preparing, if you think it is not needed, or if you think it is not affordable. I think there's a very high amount of stress that is associated, that comes to your life during this process. So even if you are giving one attempt, the cycle takes about 1 to 2 years by the time the final result comes. And then if you're giving 2 attempts, about 2 to 2.5 years goes. So there is a lot of stress. I think it is important to accept that there is a lot of randomness in this exam. That this is not an exam where input is directly proportional to the output, where if you are good and if you have good notes and if you have written well, if you have written well, again there is a level of subjectivity. It depends on who is correcting and whether you have actually written well in terms of the question asked or what is asked. So I think you need to accept that there's a lot of factors involved, there is a lot of randomness, and so try to give your best and then leave it at some point. And secondly, I feel focus should be on simplicity. Like I still feel there are only 3 things. One is the syllabus wise things for mains. Each topic which is listed is the most important thing. Second is previous year question. Third is current. That is just 1 year, any one area. So this is like simplicity, and second is like a little level, a small level of detachment after giving your best. So I think that intensity is very important. That the drive is the most important thing in this exam. So focus on things that are almost there. Like focus on the low hanging fruits, be it PYQ, be it the areas which repeat. For example, for prelims, I still think even though questions are becoming very random and being asked from multiple areas, I think polity, economics and history, the static part still gives about 50% of the questions. So focusing on those I think will probably fetch more or is a safer strategy. And then I feel any one good current monthly magazine freely available in internet and paper. I think reading newspaper is also important, but then if you can't read it fully, at least read the headlines, at least read the Indian Express explained page or the Hindu FAQ, or even if you can't do that, if you have absolutely no time in some weeks, then just read the compilation, but just be aware, be in tune with what is happening. I think those are things which could work. Thank you for having me here. I think I wish most of the serious aspirants who are seeing this all the very best, and I have uploaded some of my content and I'll be doing that in some of the Telegram channels. Thank you.